Hello.
Hello, Gmar Tov to you. How are you?
Good to see you as well.
Good.
How's everything?
Everything's good, bro. Yeah.
Good. Good to hear.
How was your davening?
Everything's good.
Yeah,
Everything is going according to plan.
there you go. Whose plan?
My wife's plan. I don't know.
There you go. Smart move.
Yeah, I figured that out right away. Hi, Ernie.
Hi, guys.
Hello, Gmar Tov.
Yeah, where did we finish last night?
I will tell you right now. We did Yud Beis. We did 12.
We finished 12?
We finished 12. Yeah. So
Oh,
we're on
yeah,
Yud.
yeah. Got it. Okay.
Ben Azai Tzad Kores Loy Porach. That because we made it Tzad Hashava, we made a common denominator between a Pesach and a Chatas, because a Chatas is brought for an Aveira that you get Kores as a punishment. The Korban Pesach, by being Mavatel, the Korban Pesach, you also get Kores. According to Ben Azai, that's not really a comparison. There's a connection to Kores, but not enough to join them. So the Gemara says, Osham Nami Lais. Why shouldn't an Osham be included, according to the way Ben Azai is learning, that it would be Pasal Shalol Lishma, because Osham Parech Malat Tzadashava Shebehen Shekin Yeshlam B'tzibur Kiviyochid. A Korban Pesach and a Korban Chatas has common denominator that both the Yochid and a Tzibur can bring either the Korban Pesach. The Korban Pesach Bichlal is considered like is a hybrid between a Korban Tzibur and a Korban Yochid, because like 10 people can bring it together. While in Osham, there's no such thing as a public Osham. V'boy Semet said Koris Nami Porech, that in Osham there's no Koris attached to it, but there is Chatas and Pesach. Uben Azai, he learned that an Ola that is Shechted Shalol Lishma is possible as a Gemara Gemirilo, just as not through a drasha, but through a Mesorah. Adikam Ravuna Kavachoymer. That was not Ben Azai didn't use that. V'lo El Chad Basa Tamido. Ravuna was using it sort of to test his students, to teach them about Kavachoymer. But Ben Azai didn't use that source for his din. Mishnah. Pesach v'achatas sheshachtan shelo lishman. Korban Pesach or Korban Chatas, if the shechita was done not lishma. Oh, kibel. You received the blood in a kli, and when you received it, you had in mind shelo lishma. Or holach. You walked the kli to the mizbech. Or zorak. Or you did the zricha shelo lishman. Or lishman v'shelo lishman, or shelo lishman v'lishman. You could have a combination. You could think of it lishma and shelo lishma. And you could do the opposite. You could do lishma and shelo lishma. Ketzad lishman and shelo lishman. For example, if a person had in mind, when he shechted l'shem pesach, u l'shem shlami. How does shelo lishman work? When you shechted a korban pesach, l'shem shlami, l'shem pesach. And the Mishnah gives us a rule, is zevach nifsal ba'arba dvarim. The four primary avodot of a korban, shchita, kabbalah, haylach, and zrika, they can be nifsal with a machshavas psula, right? With a thought of shelo lishma. b'shchita, b'kibul, b'hiluch, b'zrika. Rav Shimon machshir b'hiluch. Rav Shimon says having an improper kavana during walking, carrying the kli to the mizbech does not invalidate. Why? Shayu oimer. You cannot process the korban without shchita. Of course, you got to get the blood, and you have to receive the blood. The blood can't pour on the ground; it has to be poured into a kli, and then you have to do zrika. But technically, you could get away with processing a korban without holoch when if where you do the shechita, you can do the shechita wherever you want in the Azara. So if you shechted it right next to the mizbeach and you receive the blood right next to the mizbeach and you did zrika, there doesn't have to be any halacha. Reb Shimon machshir b'hiluch, right? Shai omer efshar shelo b'shchit shelo b'kolov shelo efshar b'lo hiluch, right? B'tzara mizbeach v'zor. Reb Eliezer omer, it depends. I'm halich b'makom shutzarach lahalech machshava poiselas. If you shechted the korban distant from the mizbeach, so you needed to walk the kli to the mizbeach, then having a pasal tika machshava during that hoilacha would invalidate the korban. If you were close to the mizbeach and you didn't need to do halacha, and bisman she'ena tzarech lahalech and machshava is poiselas, then if you didn't really need to do it, then having a bad machshava during hoilacha would not invalidate. Afraid the Gemara of Kabbalah mi pasla. The Gemara is going to ask, where do you see that having an improper machshava during Kabbalah also invalidates? V'hatani v'krivu bnei Aaron hakohanim es adam. Zu Kabbalah sadam. Chazal tell us that pasuk relates to Kabbalah. Now it doesn't say Kabbalah; it says v'krivu. So ato emer Kabbalah sadam oino zrika. Maybe it refers to zrika. So kshu oimer v'zarku es adam al mizbeach savi. There's a pasuk that talks about zrika. Harei zrika amor. Hamani makayim v'krivu zu Kabbalah sadam. So that's the famous drasha that tells us that v'hikrivu bnei Aaron hakohanim es adam refers to Kabbalah. Now, when it says bnei Aaron hakohanim, shetehei b'kohen kosher, the Kabbalah has to be done with a kosher kohen, not a halal, not a balmum. And he has to be wearing bikli shares. He has to be wearing the bigdei kahuna. Amar v'kiva v'nai leKabbalah shelo tehei ela b'kohen kosher b'kli shares. Where's the source that Kabbalah has to be done with a kosher kohen and bigdei kahuna? Nemar kan bnei Aaron v'nemar lahalan ela shmos bnei Aaron hakohanim hamshuchim asher milei adam lechahen. Ma lahalan b'kohen kosher, because it says the bnei Aaron are the Elazar v'his Tamar. We know they were kosher kohanim. Ubekli sharis, because it says asher milei adam lechahen, which means they were dressed bigdei kahuna avkan. So here, when it talks about Kabbalah and it says bnei Aaron, it refers to bekohen kosher bekli sharis. Omrav tarfin. Akapech es bonai. It's like making an oath. I should lose my children. Im lo shamati lahavchin hefresh ben Kabbalah zrika. I heard from my rebbeim that there is a distinction between Kabbalah and zrika, but he didn't remember the ainli lefaresh, and I don't know which halacha is different between Kabbalah and zrika. Amar Rav Akiva ani efresh. Rav Akiva remembered that Kabbalah lo asaba machshava kemaisa, that a machshava will not passel during Kabbalah as a zrika asaba machshava kemaisa, but having an improper machshava during zrika will passel as if you did a maisa. Another distinction: if blood kiblu bachutz, if the blood was received outside the base of mikdash, eno chayav kares. There's no kares. But zarko bachutz, if you did zrika of the dam outside of the base of Mikdash, there is kores. However, kiblu psulim ein chayav alav. If Pasal Dika Kohanim did the Kabbalah, there's no chiyuv. But zarku psulim chayav alav. If non-kosher Kohen did the zrika, then you're chayav. So Rabbi Kiva gave Rav Tarfon a whole list of distinctions. Armalo, Rav Tarfon, ha'avodah, meaning it's another, like a shvua. Imitisa yominu small. If you would have veered right or left from what I heard from my rebbeim, ani shamati ve'en li lefaresh, but I couldn't remember anything. Ata dorish u'maskim l'shmua. But your drasha was exactly what I had heard. And b'lashon hazeh amar lo Akiva kol ha'porish mimcha keporish mechayf. And Rav Tarfon told Rabbi Akiva, whoever separates from you is like he's separating from his life. We need you like we need oxygen. However, from this Rabbi Akiva, we have a problem. Because Rabbi Akiva seemed to suggest that an improper machshava will not passel by Kabbalah. But we brought from our Mishnah that improper machshavas during Kabbalah does invalidate. Amar Rav Eloi Kasha. When do we say that a machshava does not passel by Kabbalah, but machshava is pigul? When the person is makabel blood, with the thought to be maktir the emurim, the innards, tomorrow, or to eat of the meat tomorrow. So that machshava pigul doesn't work by Kabbalah. But kan, the machshava that passes by Kabbalah is machshava shaloi lishma. Having in mind to receive blood of a shlomim when it's really a korban pesach, that type of Kabbalah will invalidate the korban. Dekanami diktani. It says shazevach nifsal, the loktani mispagel. It doesn't say that the korban becomes pigul, it becomes invalid. So we're talking about shaloli shma, not pigul. Shma mina, that seems to be good. The Gemara accepts that. Freit the Gemara, the machshavas pigul or pasal b'Kabbalah, does a machshavas pigul is not effective during the act of Kabbalah Vatanya? Yachal lo tehei machshava moyeles ela b'zrika bilvad. I might think that a chutz lizmano machshava, like having in mind to eat tomorrow, what you're supposed to eat today, that would invalidate only when you do zrika. Minay l'rabba shchita v'Kabbalah. How do I know that the machshavas of chutz lizmano will create pigul even during the avoid of shchita Kabbalah? Talmud loymar, im he'achol yachel mipsar zevach shlama b'yom hashlishi pigul hu lo yiratze. That's referring to having a machshava during the avodah to eat the korban chutz lizmano. And the double language of he'achol yachel teaches bidvar mevim l'dei achila kosu medaber. We're talking about those processes of a korban that allows us to eventually eat the korban. So Kabbalah, without Kabbalah, you can't get the blood, and therefore you can't do zrika. And the zrika is what allows you to eat the meat. So Yachol Shani Marbe Af Shvicha Shirayim. For example, after you do zrika, you have blood in the kli, and you do zrika. There's blood that's left in the bowl. There's a process called Shvicha Shirayim. You dump the remainder of the blood onto the foundation of the mizbeach. Now, Shvicha Shirayim it's not a necessary avoda to allow you to eat the korban. It's mitzvah min hamufchor. This is what you should do if you have leftover blood. But it's not ma'akev. But I might think that having an improper machshava during shvicha shirayim or haktoras emur, let's say you have the innards, and the innards have to be burned at night on the mizbeach, but it's not la'akev. If you didn't do it, it doesn't ruin the korban. You're still allowed to eat the korban. I might think that having a machshavas pigul during Shvicha Shirayim or Aktos Amirim would ruin it. Talmud Lomar, Bayom HaShlishi lo yiratzeh, Hamakriv otzo lo yichashem. Zrika bichlal. Haisa. Zrika was already the avodot. V'lama yatzasa. Why all of a sudden do we talk especially about Zrika? La'aki shela, lo mecha. Ma Zrika miuchedes shi avodo u'ma'keves kapara. Zrika is the act that, number one, gives you atonement, allows you to eat. Av kol avodo u'ma'keves kapara. So pigul is only going to be an improper machshava during an act which leads directly to eating it. Yotzu shvicha shirayim v'aktor semurim she'ein ma'akvin es hakapara. But dumping the remaining blood or burning the emurim is not ma'akiv the kapor. You get kapor without that. Therefore, machshavas pigul is not operative there. But comes from this brisa we just quoted, that you can have a machshavas pigul during Kabbalah, not like what Rava said. So how are we resolving this? Eloi kasha. That which Rava said, that there is no machshavas pigul during Kabbalah, that's the Omar, Hareni shoichet amanas lekabel dama lamachar. That if he says, I'm going to shecht with the thought that with the condition I'm going to receive the blood tomorrow. So there's no machshavas pigul because that Kabbalah Saddam is not going to be able to be thrown on the mizbech because it happens tomorrow. But when we say that having a machshavas pigul during Kabbalah does work, is the Omer Hareini Makabel Dama Manas Lishpach Shirayim tomorrow. If you say I'm going to be Makabel, the blood, on the condition that I'm going to dump the blood on the Mizbeach tomorrow. Now, anything that, even Achilas Mizbeach, tomorrow is a problem by Kibbul. So that will work. Amr le'ahum rabbanon l'rava. V'shvicha shirayim v'aktos amirim lo paslabuhu. Is it true that having a machshavas pigul during dumping the shirayim or the aktos amirim does not create pigul? Lo paslav machshav vatnan. Yachol, I might think lo te machshavas moelas ela b'achilas basar. I might think that an improper machshava of chutz l'zmano is only when you're going to eat the meat tomorrow. But even something that you dump on the mizbeach is called achilas mizbeach. Minayin l'rabo is shvicha shiram v'ktor emurim. Burning the emurim, even though they're not ma'akev, it's still considered achila. Talmud lomer ve'im he'achol ye'achel. B'shtei achilos hakosu b'daber. The double language of achila talks about human consumption and the mizbech consuming. Achas achilas adam, when either the bailim or the kohanim eat the meat. Achas achilas mizbech, either the dam or the emurim touch the mizbech. So loikasha, when does machshava create pigul to omar hareni zoyrek al menas lishpok shirayim l'machar? If a person, when he does the zrika, has in mind that I'm going to dump the shirayim tomorrow, so you are having a chutz l'zmano machshava during something that's ma'akiv kapor, which is zrika, on something that the mizbech is going to eat. So that creates pigul. But when machshavas pigul does not work, hada omar hareni shofech shirayim, when you're having the bad machshava during pouring of the shirayim, which is not essential for eating, and you have in mind lakter mim l'macha, that's not nefagel, because it's not ma'akiv the kapora, the shvicha shirayim. Shamati shetfilas etzba mefagelas b'chatas pnimis. So this week, Yom Kippur is coming up, and we're going to hear in the avoda that the Kohen Gadol shechts the par, the sa'ir. He collects the blood, and he uses his finger, and he'll achas u'shtaim. He does that with his finger, and little drops are thrown on the paroiches, and in the Kodesh Kodoshim with his finger. So Rav Yehuda just stated that having a machshava during this finger business creates pigul, like when he dips his finger into the blood in order to do the hazah, and he has in mind to be maktu the emurim tomorrow, that's pigul. Shama Ilfa heard this, va'amakar made Rav Pada, and he repeated in front of Rav Pada, Rav Pada, klum lo lamadnu pigul ala mishlamim. He says the odd pasuk that we've been reading today, the source of pigul is written by Shlomi. And ma shlamim ain't tfilas etzba fagelos behan. There is no finger process by a Shlomi. There's no tfilas etzba. So therefore, since the whole concept of pigul is learned from Shlomim, so even though there are chatos, there are korban chatas, where you do the finger, av chatas ain't tfilas etzba fagelos behan. That's what he said. Frank the Gemara v'chiyakol mishlomim lamdu. We didn't learn all the details of pigul from Shlomim. Otherwise, we would have said imash Shlomim shaloli shman ein motzimidei pigul. Let's say you during the shchit of the Shlomim, you had a shaloli shma machshava. Now, a shaloli shma machshava makes the korban still kosher. So you might think that having a shaloli shma machshava during Shlomim would ruin pigul. It doesn't. It can still be mafagel. Ein motzimidei av bechatos. You might think that if you had a shaloli shma machshava during a chatas, it would not ein motzimidei pigul. But if you have an improper machshava regarding lishma by chatas, we know that doesn't create pigul. Well, we know why. Because having an improper machshava by chatas ruins the whole korban. It's not kosher at all. But the Gemara wants to say, you see, we don't learn everything from Shlomim. Elamais l'chala meimar. Mi ribui dekroi kasi, from multiple psukim. Hachanami ribui dekroi kasi. This tfilas etzba is from multiple psukim. Like we learn, Amr Yeshua ben Levi. Ba'ali azu, when we were in this attic, and we were learning, Shomati shetfilas etzba fagelas. I learned that having a bad machshava during dipping your finger will create pigul. But Tohi bo Rab Shimon ben Lakish. Rish Lakish was wondering, Klum lamdu pigul ala mishlomim? We didn't just learn pigul from Shlomim, because if we did, ma Shlomim ain't tfilas etzba fagelas bahen, just like there is no finger action by Shlomim, therefore there's no pigul by Shlomim with a finger. Avchatas ain't tfilas elam fagelas ben. Then having a machshavas pigul during the finger avoda by the chatas also shouldn't work. And then v'kiakol mishlomim lamdu ima shlomim shalosh shman ein motzi b'dei pigul. Just like by a Shlomim, having an improper machshavas shalosh shman continues does not necessarily ruin it for pigul. Avchatas shalosh shman ein motzi b'dei pigul. I would think that a chatas is the same thing, but we know a chatas shalosh shman is ruined by pigul. So on Rav Yosef Rav Chanina, in fact, we don't learn all the dinim of pigul from Shlomim. If I have in mind, when I do the shchita of a Shlomim, that I'm going to eat it in Tel Aviv, not Yerushalayim, and that passes the Shlomim, and who shalol lishma poisel b'chatas, and a shalol lishma machshava passes by chatas, so we can learn. Machutz limkoyma poisel b'shlomim, just like having a machshava of chutz limkoyma will invalidate a shlomim, and moitzim midei pigul, and will invalidate any pigul machshavas then, because pigul would not attach if I had a chutz limkoyma machshava af shalol lishma poisel b'chatas moitzim midei pigul. And basically, what Rabbi Yosef Rav China is learning is we do learn everything from Shlomim. Because the pasuk is from Shlomim, this also could be learned from Shlomim. Omer of Yirmiyah, mitzida tavra. We could break this svara. Malachutzim komo apostle b'Shlomim. A chutzim komo machshava by Shlomim, which removes the pasuk of pigul. Shekenoy b'chol Zevachim. A chutzim komo machshava ruins any korban, not just the Shlomim. Toimer shalol lishmo she'enu nagel b'pesav chatas mulvad. But we've learned a shalol lishma machshava only ruins 2 korbanos, Pesach and Chatas. What are you going to say? That the limud from Shlomim is called Dover HaPoisel Behem. Anything that invalidates it, like by a Shlomim, which is a Machshava Chutz Komo, Moitzim Idei Pigul. So Dover HaMa'akev Behem, or, just like we said, any avoda, which, if you didn't do it, it would be Ma'akev the Kapora, Mevin L'Dei Pigul. It's only having a Pigul Machshava during those avodot, which create Pigul. So Hachanami, by Chatas Apnimis as well. If you don't use the finger, you didn't have kapora. Number one, davar hapoisel b'motzim midei pikul. So that's a shalol lishma machshava. And davar hama'akev b'mavila de pikul. If something that leads that you don't get kapora would also not lead to pikul. So since dipping the finger is required, it's a necessity, it makes pikul as well. Amar of Mary. He brings support that having a bad machshava during the tefillas etzba would create pikul. Afanana mitanina. Ze'aklal. Kol ha'koimetz. For example, when you do kmitza by mincha, or vanoisein bekli, you dump the kmitza into the kli. Ve'hamoilech, or you walk the kli over to the mizbech, or ve'hamaktir, or you dump the kmitza into the mizbech. All of those create pikul. Well, we understand why. Because those are the primary avodot that give you kapora by mincha. So bishul makoimetz hainu l'shoichet. Kmitza is analogous to shchita. Just like shchita needs to, that's how you get the blood in the kli. Kmitza is how you get the flour into the kli. Moilich, hainu kamoilich, right? Walking the kmitza is similar to walking the blood. Maktir nami hainu kazorik. And dumping the kmitza on the mizbech is the same as doing zorik, being zorik the dam. Elanoisen bekli ma'nihu. What is putting the kmitza into the second kli? What is that similar to? Maybe it's similar to just putting a kli under the neck of the animal when you shecht it and you receive the blood. Midami, they're not comparable. Hasam and Mela, there you don't have to do anything. The blood of the animal's neck pours by itself into it. Here, you have to physically put the kmitza into the kli, so the Gemara sees it as different. Ella, so what's the comparison? It can't work without it. You have to put it in the kli to be magdish the kmitza in order to continue the avodah of the mincha. So now we have a new language. It's called an avodah chashuva. Therefore, it's mefageles. Hachanami, dipping the kohen gadol, dipping his finger is an avodah chashuva, and therefore it has pigul. Because kivan de lo sagi de lo avidle, al korcha hainu halacha. So it's similar. It's got to be done. And halacha, the Gemara wants to say it has to. You got to. If you're far away, there's no way to get the blood over to the mizbech. Why shouldn't it work by halacha? So la'olam the dami lekabbalah. So really, dumping the kmitza into a second kli is similar to kabbalah of the dam from a korban. You tried to say no. The ka'amrit hachamemela. The blood dumps by itself. But here he actually physically puts it in there. Kan aidi va'aidi matan kliyu, but it doesn't really. That's not a difference. You're putting it into the kli. Mali memela, mali kashakal. What's the difference? Whether it dumps into the blood by itself or you have to put it there. It's the same. The Gemara Nas is lema ketanoi. Let us say that this issue of tfilas etzba, whether it's mafagel during the dipping of the finger, is a machlokas tanoi. The Tani Chada, tfilas etzba fagelos b'chatas. So one Mishnah says that having in mind chutz lizmano machshava during dipping your finger will create pickle. The Tani Yidich lo mufagelos. The other mandar says no. Lo mispagelos. Lo mifagelos, v'lo mispagelos. For example, if you during dipping your finger you had in mind to be makter the emurim. And mispagelis would be, let's say you did shchita in order to dip your finger tomorrow. That's what it means, mifagelis and mispagelis. And so the Gemara says, my left tanoi. So the Gemara wants to say that this issue of whether having a machshavas pickle during dipping your fingers, a machlokes tanoi, the Gemara says low. Everybody agrees that tefillas etzba is like koilacha. So what's the machlokes? Elaha Rabban and Harab Shimon. That we said before, according to Rab Shimon, hoilacha, you don't need hoilacha in some cases. So therefore, since it's not necessary in all cases, you can't make pickle during hoilacha. And the Rabbanan say no, since it's sometimes required, it creates pickle. Well, the Gemara asks, Rab Shimon, my iriya tefillas etzba. Why are you only bringing the case of dipping the finger into the blood? We'll see. Rab Shimon could be referring to something else as well. Okay. So we said tomorrow the shir will be at 8 p.m.
Okay.
Right after shir.
Okay, guys. Shabbat shalom.
Shabbat.
Shabbat shalom.
Now, when we at the shir.
Walter,